All right, we up? All right. Okay, y'all, you ready for the... Well, Zach.
Hello.
Everybody, this is Zach Quillen, the manager of Macklemore and Ryan Lewis. Please give him a big round of applause. Well, Zach, I have to say, this is fucking awesome. I'm really looking forward to having a chance to chat with you. We've never met in person, except for a quick hello out in the lobby. Thank you so much for coming to New Orleans. Thank you for being a part of the Sync Up Conference.
Oh, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
So the reason that it was so important to us to ask you to come and talk about this as a business story is Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, an artist that was not an overnight success, seemed yet to come out of nowhere and rocketed to the top of the charts and radio play, platinum sales with an independent release. So you guys are like, you were on the band was on Stephen Colbert this week and basically said, this has never been done before. So you guys are the poster child for explaining that this can actually happen. It can be done in this day and age to release your own record and go platinum. And so this is incredibly exciting. It's an incredibly exciting time for us. And understanding the story of how that happened is just something that I personally am fascinated with. So if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you to you all are still a mystery to us. So can you just kind of talk for a couple of minutes about your background and how you got into the business and where you're from, and you were a booking agent for a long time. How did you get to that point? And then we'll pick it up with the success of the band.
Sure. My entry into the business was in college as part of an internship program. I worked at a local music venue, which was
where?
Oh, at Florida State University in Tallahassee. I grew up in South Florida and ended up there for school. But yeah, I started an internship program at a small rock club, 500 cap, and stayed there for about 2 years and just, I did everything. I was a runner. I designed graphics. I, dropped tickets at outlets. I brought artists to radio stations, whatever. And essentially worked for free for a couple years, but that gave me, when it came time to graduate, that gave me my entry lane into the agency group.
So are you from Florida originally?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you grew up in the Tallahassee area?
No, I grew up in South Florida, just a bit north of Miami.
Okay.
Yeah.
So college internships, doing all the scut work that one can possibly imagine is when you're starting out really young?
Yeah. I mean, at the time, and at Florida State, there wasn't a music industry program or really anything that I could dump myself into. Even, college radio wasn't something I was too terribly interested in, and there wasn't, a program that was drawing me in. So I was just trying to find my way and figure out. I knew I wanted to be around live music. At the time, I wasn't educated to the different facets of the industry or how to do it. Literally saw a band I really liked at the venue I was at, and found the owner after the show and asked him if he wanted free help, and he was like, "Sure, come on in tomorrow." And I started and ended up there for 2 years, just, pretty much unpaid, just doing whatever I could. And at the time, when it came time to graduate, I asked, the owner of the club, like, what do you suggest? I through that work, kind of began to understand what agents did and managers did and publicists did and radio promo, how I got to, get a grasp of all the different pieces. And, he said, I've heard that there's an opening at the agency group. I could get your resume in. And
major booking agency headquartered in New York.
Right.
And so you went to New York.
So I did. So he got my resume in. I got an interview, interviewed against, 40 or 50 people, got an assistant gig, and literally drove up to New York over a weekend and started to work on Monday.
And what was your entry-level job there?
I was an assistant for an agent named Peter Schwartz, who at the time...
You still work with today?
Who now is the booking agent for Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, yeah. I started as his assistant. At the time, he was representing all of my childhood heroes. He was representing the Wu-Tang Clan and just all of these hip hop acts that I had grown up idolizing. He was building their touring careers and maintaining their touring careers. And so for me, I mean, it was a dream come true. Just to, my second day, Raekwon came in the office. I was just like, oh shit, like I'll do this for free as long as you want me to,
And so you were a booking agent. So you were getting gigs for these hip hop heroes of yours.
Yeah, exactly. I spent probably 3 or 4 years working with Peter and just learning how touring worked, learning how to book shows, digging into the deals and how the actual process of contracting these engagements and how to form a marketing strategy around a tour. All of these different bits that go into touring careers. I spent my first few years just understanding and asking a ton of questions and just soaking it all in.
Awesome. So, 10 years?
Yeah. I left the agency group about 6 months ago, but I had, up to that point, spent 10 years there.
And you, if I remember correctly, I read somewhere that you still are a booking agent for you have one client as a booking agent. Who's that?
I do. A group called Blue Scholars, who are from Seattle, who are actually the guys who introduced me to Ben and Ryan.
Ben Haggerty is Macklemore,
right,
and Ryan Lewis, the producer of the duo.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, thank you for that. So, tell us more about meeting Ben and Ryan. How did that happen, and what was the interaction?
I met Ben in March of 2010 at South by Southwest. And the guys in that group, Blue Scholars, introduced me to him at a showcase I had put on at Emos. And he was, I hadn't heard of him as an artist. He was a guy, not surprisingly, in a fur coat, who...
Bought in a thrift shop.
Definitely.
Looking for a come-up.
Yeah. He literally was in a floor-length fur coat, and I remember thinking, who is this dude? Funny enough, it made him memorable to me for sure. We had a brief conversation, and the meeting stuck in my head. And from that point, I ended up, I think a couple weeks later, just finding his MySpace page and just started to pay attention from there.
So at that point, you hadn't even seen him perform or heard his music really?
I hadn't heard a single song or seen a show, no.
Now, this is a guy that had been around for quite some time in the Seattle area, had a lot of rough times, personal issues and so on, and managed to come out on the other side and really develop his craft. So at what point did you say to yourself, I want to manage you, or to him, I want to, where did you have that internal conversation where you said, I no longer want to be a booking agent working for a large agency, that's the guy, and I want to manage them?
Yeah. It's a long story. I'll try to be short. I started following him online, soaking in the music. I was actually really impressed by the aesthetic of his MySpace page. It looked like something a major label might have created 15 years ago. It was really slick. And the songs resonated with me, and I really was drawn to how thematic the whole thing was.
So MySpace is still worth something?
At that point, yeah. And from there, I called him up a few months later and, asked him if he would be up for me working as his agent and helping to start to build something on the touring side. And at the time, he had no help at all. It was him and Ryan really doing everything themselves. No manager, no publicist, nothing.
And were they doing a lot of live shows? Were they touring?
It was local. It was, they would drive up to Bellingham, Washington, or Vancouver, or they would, play in Portland and Seattle, that sort of thing. And they had, from what they were telling me, they had a little thing going, but there wasn't, every promoter or anybody else I asked had never heard of them, so.
And so, had you heard any of the new music, like the song Thrift Shop or any of that stuff at that point?
Oh, no, none of that existed at that point.
So you really had a leap of faith. You were like, I think there's something here that we can take national.
Yeah, I think that in the music business, especially today, with so much saturation and a lot of noise and a lot of artists, there's just more people making music and pushing it out on the internet today, obviously, than there ever have been before. So as an agent even, or a manager, anyone, there are often times where you just have to go with your gut if you want to be first, you know? So if I wanted to get in early with something, especially as a young agent at the time, I didn't have the luxury of just having major artists call and ask me if I wanted to work for them. So it was about getting in early and being a part of developing something. And with that, you just have to trust your instincts. So for me, in calling him and getting that started was just like, I think there's something that could be built there with him.
Okay, so the question is obvious. At that point, were you thinking, okay, let's get a record deal?
No, well, so I stayed as his agent for about 6 months, and we had a couple really interesting things happen, things that surprised us. For example, in Seattle, where he was from, he had mentioned to me that he felt like he had a pretty good little fan base going, but really, personally, wasn't even sure how big it is or what it was. So the first thing that I wanted to do was have him headline a proper show in Seattle and see, is there something there in the hometown? And so we put up a night at the Showbox, which is like a 1,200 capacity venue, and it's sold out in an hour. And so I was like, oh, well, this is, a little bit more substantial than even obviously he thought. We ended up doing 3 nights there that sold out within, I think, 24 hours of 3 nights, which is...
Through social media?
Yeah, we actually didn't spend $1 on advertising. It was social media promotion only over, it was a few posts. And we sold 3,600 tickets.
So obviously, people knew who he was.
So people knew who he was. And people in Seattle knew who he was, and they were obviously very connected, and they had been waiting for this. Even though no one else, even the promoter of the show at AEG, who's a good friend of ours now, but was like very skeptical about allowing us the one night. Was like, yeah, maybe you should start off at the 400 cap place and see how it goes. And all of a sudden, we're at 4,000 tickets in 24 hours. So it was a shock.
So at that point, when you realized that there was this connection with an audience and there was this untapped fan base out there, were you starting to think maybe we don't need a label?
I think that, at that point was one of my first, because I had been as an agent, I had been there doing it for a while, and I was a bit stifled by the work. It was good. I enjoyed it. I felt like I was pretty good at it. I had figured it out a bit. But it wasn't creatively fulfilling for me. So I had begun to think like I might want to get into something else. I might want to, with the right project, be more hands-on. So it was at that point I started to think about Ben and Ryan that way. Like maybe this is the one where I can dig in and create something more and be more hands-on and allow myself to be more creative, that sort of thing. So that was the moment. And then I flew up to Seattle a couple months later. He was opening up a show at a larger venue, and I was standing with him on a street corner, and there were teenagers just flocking to us, girls coming up crying, and it was a celebrity scene.
That's always a good sign.
Yeah, with a local artist. I had never seen anything like it before. Literally, we went and got something to eat, and I brought up the question. I was like, I think... I had been helping out with other managerial style things with him because he didn't have anybody. And then I asked him that night, how about we give this a shot? And he was into it. And the agency group then, was into it and allowed it to happen.
So did you quit your job at the agency group?
I didn't. I stayed there. The folks at the agency group were really supportive of the idea. And at that time, to my knowledge, there hadn't been another agent at the agency group that also managed a band. So there's, some gray area there. So they allowed me to essentially continue on as an agent there with other clients and then do this on the side. And so I spent about a year doing both.
Okay. We're going to run out of time fairly quickly, so let's talk about the part where you
Sure.
guys decided to put it out independently.
Yeah.
What was that about?
I think that I've said to other people that I think that our lack of experience was our best bit of experience in this. I coming from an agent background, I had seen through my other clients the major label system fail before. And so I had a bit of natural skepticism there for it. And, as I began to present the info to Ben and Ryan, here are essentially all of the varying ways you can do this. we can go this route with a label, we can do this, we can do a P&D deal, we can, we went through all of the different options, and I think that, and we took all the meetings. We met with pretty much every major label out there, because I wanted them to feel like we're going to explore all the ways you can do this, and then as a group we'll decide which one makes the most sense to us. And I think when you dig into what the major label system has left to offer versus the average deal that's out there that comes along with it, for an artist that already had something, that already had this connection to a fan base, and who already had an outstanding album that didn't require, an A&R. And we had the ability with social media to reach a lot of people for free. And we had enough leverage to get a great distribution deal on our own. It just made sense. The guys wanted to control everything, they wanted to control the whole of their creative output. They wanted to reap the lion's share of the profit. And we had a touring career built at that time that allowed us capital. So that's the other thing. I mean, the major label system has access to radio. They have capital. We had one of those already. And so there was no need for an advance. There was no need for funding. We were able to go get a distribution deal, fund the album ourselves. The guys are, extremely hands-on with everything they do. But one of the biggest, outside of producing music, one of the biggest areas of talent that they have is in all things aesthetic. So they can make great music videos and use YouTube as a free platform to reach people. And we just felt like at the end of the day, we had a really good shot of doing something special without anybody's help.
And you didn't need to have an appearance on The Voice or
No.
something like that in order to get out in front of a big audience.
No, I mean, we had the internet, and it's free. And I think if you're doing something special, as long as you're starting with some level of audience and you have these amazing free platforms to start conversation, and what you're doing is worthy of conversation, then that's really all you need.
Okay, so you made the record, took the meetings, decided not to sign with Universal or Sony or Warner's, but you did decide that you wanted a distribution deal. And so you went with ADA, which is a division of the Warner Music Group.
Right, yep. It's the
independent. So what did that mean? So you still own everything, but they were then your distributor to get you out into stores on all the digital media platforms and so on.
Yeah, exactly. We wanted a legitimate release. So we wanted the album really on shelves. We wanted the physical album on shelves, not as much as a means of making money, because there's, even as an independent artist, there's still somewhat of a ceiling in place with how much you can earn from selling a physical product in these stores.
But you didn't think that selling online was enough?
We wanted a legitimate presentation. So I think that there was a legitimacy of, having your album on an end cap in Best Buy. It means something to people. So we wanted
from a visibility standpoint, from a credibility standpoint, not your own ego, but getting people to take you seriously.
Exactly. Using it as a bit of marketing. So that was important to us, and ADA could deliver that for us. And they also had, we saw early on that, being a subsidiary of the Warner Group, they had resources that we could tap into without having to play ball and do a standard record deal. So they had a little radio department. They had a little marketing department. They had, ADA is essentially a distributor, but it's a glorified one in that they have bits of these services that a label might provide.
So a lot of the distributors now, Red is a good example, a division of Sony, ADA, and some of the other ones, E1, Fontana, I think, they're all now since the label side of the business is doing what it's doing, the distributors are now catering to independent labels and independent artists even, and offering this menu of services that before you couldn't get unless you were signed to a deal. So we've got a publicity department. You guys need some. We can do some social media for you, although you guys didn't need that because you're on top of it. We can provide radio promotion. And so that seems to be the thing that really stuck out for you guys, is something, radio was what you needed. So tell us about the thought process in wanting to go after radio.
From the jump, when we were sitting there forming our campaign around the album and budgeting, we realized that, and we had to prioritize all of these different things. How much are we going to spend on online marketing? How much are we going to spend here? How much are we going to spend there? And radio promotion was something that came up often. The thing is, with independent radio promotion, it can cost a healthy penny. And when we built our budget around the album, especially at first, we couldn't afford it. We figured, we were going to need into the six figures
Now, they're distributing your record for you. Did they offer something like, hey, you can buy our radio promotion service from us, but we're going to give you an advance on your record sales to pay for the radio promotion? Was there something like that? Or did they just charge you a fee?
No, I mean, early when we first did our deal with ADA, we knew that they had a small alternative radio department, but we hadn't included it in our deal. We knew it was out there, and it was a conversation we could have if we wanted it at some point. After the album came out, it debuted at number 2, and we actually started getting some organic spins at radio on Thrift Shop. We felt like, okay, this is our time to have that conversation. So we had our conversation with ADA. Hey, how can we come up with something one-off to try this on Thrift Shop? That's what we wanted, was a level of flexibility. We wanted to be able to pay for these services out of pocket, not be indebted on a long-term basis, and give it a shot. And because we had already debuted at number 2 and we were starting to get some of these organic spins, they were up for trying it. And so our initial deal with them on that was a straight-up flat monthly retainer for on a one-off basis to experiment.
Not unlike what you would do with a publicist, for example.
It worked exactly like how you would work with a publicist. You pay them on a fee basis.
And so, my own experience with Thrift Shop was, and I've told this story a few times, is Spotify. Not on the What's Hot channel, but on the What's New channel. Okay, new record, never heard of these guys. Macklemore who? Here's a song. Oh, it's kind of catchy. Not entirely sure I'm buying it, but it was kind of cool. A few weeks later, I'm watching NPR on my computer, NPR Music, and there's a Tiny Desk concert. Wait, there's the Mackle guy. What are they doing on Tiny Desk? And they exploded out of the screen. It was just unbelievable. And then the next thing you know, I'm driving my kids home from school, and they want to listen to Top 40 radio, and there's the song. It's like, wait a second. That's the song that was just a new release. Now it's the hot release. Now it's on Top 40 radio. Wait a second. How did this happen? They have no label? It's an indie. They're keeping all the money? How did you? So, what happened?
So our little experiment with alternative radio worked. And the response to the record was really strong at that format. And we also were supplementing our campaign, as you saw, with credible things like the NPR Tiny Desk. And this really...
Highly credible.
Yeah. What it boils down to is that the album is special and these guys are special. And I think that, people, if you're looking for a formula, you can look at what we've done, I think, and find little things that can work for certain artists. But what you're selling has to be unique and special and timely and interesting. And I think we had that big thing going for us. But so the little campaign at Alternative worked. Then we started talking about, okay, how do we build from this? Alternative radio has a limited audience. It's credible. It's cool. It's working on this. But how do we take this to the next level? And the answer was...
So you were going from like college radio and like NPR stations and things like that. You wanted, right. So now you're looking for mainstream. You're looking for top 40.
Right, because we felt like this art had a life there, and there was potential for that. We wanted to reach Ben wants to reach as many people with his art as possible. That's the bottom line. And finding your way to top 40 radio today is still the way to do it.
As we saw from the chart before. I think number 2 on that list was radio.
Yeah.
So radio still rules and drives sales unlike anything else, more than even TV.
Yes, far more. And it's still the only way to achieve straight-up international superstar status is on Top 40 radio. That's it. You're under a glass ceiling without it. So we called, I called the head of ADA and posed a simple question. You're in the same building with one of the biggest radio departments in the world. How do we have that conversation? We obviously don't have a deal with Warner, but they have something we want. They have a service we want. How do we achieve that? And he was like, oh, well, I'll call. I'll see if we can, get a call going, but this is probably not all that likely. We got the call going. I spoke at the time with Todd Moskowitz, who was still at the Warner Group at that point, and just posed a simple question. We don't want to sign a record deal with you, but we're working with...
I'm sure that went over well.
Yeah. But we obviously have some level of relationship brewing here. We're working with your subsidiary. We have life to this song. Is there a way that we can all be happy here? Is there a way that we can utilize your radio department, experiment with this record? We'll pay you for the service. So if it works, you're going to make money. We're all going to benefit from it. Are you open to that? And the first answer was no. We don't rent out our radio department is the answer. Can you imagine what that would do to our business? No, it's all or nothing.
He saw the writing on the wall.
And so, the first answer was no, and we're like, okay. At the time, though, we were getting offered deals from every company on the planet. And I have people like L.A. Reid calling who would do damn near anything. And we had other offers coming in saying, we would do this style deal with you. We would be flexible to your needs. And I think that with a bunch of leverage and something that was already starting to work at alternative radio, the folks at Warner were like, all right, maybe we should give this a shot.
Well, it's either keep you in the building or you're bolting across the street.
Right. It was let's find a way to build this relationship. If it works, we're going to get paid for our service. It's, and today getting paid, a major label signing an artist doesn't mean they're going to profit. Certainly, the chances are they're not. So for us, there was a very obvious profit to be made by doing a deal like this, and it was a worthwhile experiment. And I think that they didn't want to break precedent, and they didn't want to create a story around it for obvious reasons. But when you added up the pros and the cons, it made sense for everyone. So they eventually said yes, and off we went.
Well, so it totally worked. You guys we're on track to have a record for a number of weeks at #1 on the R&B chart.
Yeah.
And you would have beat Beyonce for the most consecutive weeks at the top of the chart, except your own song beat you out and prevented you from getting the record. So you knocked yourself out of #1.
That's a good problem to have.
I suppose. Okay. Too bad you didn't get the record. You couldn't delay the release by a week?
I mean, for us, it wasn't about that. We wanted to create a great arch with the songs. We wanted to have Thrift Shop on its way out and Can't Hold Us on the way in, and we did exactly that. And the record would have been cool, but for us, it's about creating a long-term career around this artist, and it was the way to do it.
So top of the charts, platinum sales. And when we say platinum sales, that's combined physical and digital, right?
Yeah, the album itself is just over gold. The Thrift Shop is 6 times platinum this week, and Can't Hold Us, the single. The Can't Hold Us single is going to be 2 times platinum in a week. We have Same Love reaching gold.
So obviously, 2-3 years ago, these guys are, playing tiny little clubs. You go to larger size venue, alternative radio, now pop radio, now headlining South by Southwest, major. So this is the ride of a lifetime. You guys have bottled lightning and are, holding on for dear life, I got to imagine.
Yes. Yeah.
Trying to ride that bucking bronc.
Yeah.
And so what's next? We're almost out of time.
Yeah.
How do you say, this has been I'm trying not to use the word pinnacle, because you've gotten to the mountaintop. How do you look 10 years or 20 years into the future and see what do you want for a 10-year career with this artist?
I think that, it's always crazy when you have essentially your first single go this big. But I think that our goal is, I think we have a very special artist and special album. Our goal is to introduce the album and this person, the personality, to as many people as possible. And I think we have another year of doing that. So through further radio campaigns, through music videos, through touring, we're going to continue to use this newfound huge audience to expose how special this thing is to people. And I think we'll end up creating, and already has created, one of the bigger fan bases on the planet. And I think that we'll take a break next year and create more, and hopefully continue to make really honest, credible, unique music, and just continue to service the fans with it.
So seeing what you've seen and knowing what you know, can you envision any circumstance at all under which you as a manager would advise an artist to sign a major label deal?
Sure, I think it depends on the artist. I think that would I ever advise Ben and Ryan to do that? Probably not.
Not after the video that they made making fun of all the labels. I mean, I don't see them taking that meeting.
Yeah, probably not. I think that there are certain, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. I don't think that our approach works for everyone. I think if you're a brand new artist whose potential audience is a mainstream pop one, and you're lacking capital and you're lacking help, I think that system could be there for you and can work, and still has worked. There's certain artists that aren't going to develop a fan base on the road, and there's certain artists without the the means of creating a touring career to create capital to gain these things. So I think it could work for some people and continues to work for some people. But I think the main thing is to not think one-dimensionally. I didn't look at Ben and Ryan and felt like there's just one way to do this. I think using some common sense, looking at who you're working with and what they have as their skill set and their pool of resources, and then crafting your plan from there, knowing that there's not one way to do it today.
I can't think of a better way to sum it up. Guys, Zach Quillen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott.
Show the video. Okay, we're gonna bring Scott Goldman and Anya Grumman from NPR. One more time, Zach Quillen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right, okay, now, return to the Mac. What it is, what it does, what it is, what it isn't. Looking for a better way to get up out of bed instead of getting on the internet and checking a new hit me get up. Thrift Shop, Thrift Shop, rockin', little bit of humble, little bit of cautious. Like Rocky Kazi's Twitter game, nope, y'all can't copy it. Bad, moonwalking, this here is our party. My passion's been on Broadway, and we did it our way. Chrome music,